Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Apex 4 Elite Gaming Controller from Flydigi. I'm going to do the unboxing portion right now before I get into the specs. Pretty basic with everything that's going to come in the box, everything you would expect. So we have the controller, we have the wireless dongle, you have the USB Type-C cable that does have the good threading on it, then you have your user manual, and we're going to look at that here in a second because the outline of it and the things that it talks about kind of lead us into the specs. Now with this, it only comes in the white, and then you have the gray for the grip here. It doesn't come in another color, or it's not even really color, but it doesn't come in black. So it's just white with this, and then you have the blue accents there. This is the wireless dongle. It has a light on it that will illuminate, letting you know that it is connected. And then we have the USB Type-C cable, which is about 6 feet in length, so solid length there. This is unique, so it'll tell you on the back here. You can take this little tool and scrape an image or write something on those little pads and put it in the controller, where right now it just says Flydigi. You could actually change that if you wanted to. Now stopping here for a second. So we have how you connect this to the Switch, the force adjustable joystick instructions, which that's an important thing there because the tool is inside of the controller, essentially on the right hand side. I was trying to use the other tool. No, they've thought of everything with this controller really. So they have that just on the side. You can slip it out, quickly adjust the force with the joysticks, and then put it back, put the cover back on. Underneath that, we have specifications, so the platforms that this works with. So we have PC, Switch, Android, iOS, how you would actually connect it to that then, which essentially the dongle is for PC and then Bluetooth is for everything else. We have some more specifications underneath that. I'm going to talk about those again here in a second. Then we have the force feedback trigger instructions, how you adjust that and what that actually does. And then it talks about the Flydigi Space Station, which is the software for PC and how you can actually utilize that to customize this even more. I will be showcasing that in great detail later on in the video, by the way. Underneath that, we have appearance, which is really just an outline of all the buttons on the controller. I'm going to cover those again here in a second. And then connect your controller. It's just outlining how you would actually connect this to said device, whichever that may be, utilizing the LCD screen because you will choose from there. And then you have a frequently asked questions section, and that is going to be it. So let's go ahead and shift now, and let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into these specifications with the Apex 4. Starting with the supported platforms and covering that again, we have PC, Nintendo Switch, Android, iOS. You actually have Mac OS as long as it is their native gaming, and then you can do mobile or TV with this, but I'm assuming that has to do with it being Android based. Now connection modes here, you have wired, Bluetooth, and then the 2.4 gigahertz wireless dongle. For the wireless dongle, that's really just specific to PC. If you have a handheld and it has the regular USB type A port, you could use it there as well. Otherwise, you're going to use most likely just the Bluetooth when it comes to a handheld, just like you would with the Nintendo Switch. This has a 1000 hertz polling rate, wired or wireless, with a 1 millisecond low latency, a 1500 milliamp battery, full color interactive display, 6-axis gyroscope, and a 12-month warranty. Looking at the physical buttons, on the front you have the Flydigi self-developed forced adjustable alloy joysticks, which the front plate is held on by magnets. So once you remove the D-pad and thumbsticks, you can pop this off, and then you can use the tool that I was talking about earlier that's actually underneath this plate. Pop that out, and then you can actually adjust force, which is the lever transmission of force. To me, it feels like it's not as smooth, so there is more resistance as you start moving that thumbstick around, so you can have more or less. So here's another diagram of that. So you can go from 30 gram force, that's the GF, all the way to 100. So an Xbox standard is going to be 55. So you have more control over this now. They're also claiming 0 dead zones here, and with that, preventing any rebound or drifting. So you can see on the right hand side, less than 0.5% of rebound deviation, where the standard joystick they're saying has 5 to 10%. We will look at this a little bit in the software where you can see this kind of in real time. The ABXY buttons, the D-pad, and the 4 programmable buttons on the back are all clicky and tactile. Each has their own distinct sound and feel to them. For the ABXY buttons, they are micro switches with 0.3mm enhanced trigger speed. The D-pad is an 8 multi-directional D-cap with a 1,000,000 click lifespan, and I'm going to go ahead and do a sound test for all of these really quick before we cover the rest of the buttons on this and then shift over to the software. Next, you have the smart interactive screen that is towards the top. Here you can actually add different GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call it, to this in the software. They also have some presets that we'll look at as well, and you can change this to actually showcase the connection mode and battery life. You can use this also to change various settings. It's somewhat limited. It's not going to be as in-depth as the software, but you can change to different presets and certain settings through this, which I do like. So you don't 100% need the software. It does give you more options, and there's a lot more that you can do in that. But if you didn't have that, you could still actually adjust and change things like the adaptive triggers just through this screen, which is really nice. Next to this screen, you will find the select and start button, and then on the very bottom of the controller, it's essentially like the back and the home button. Last thing on the front that I want to cover is going to be the 2 accents of light, the one that you can actually scratch in your own little logo or whatever you would want. That one right now says Flydigi there. And then because the top is clear, you can see the motors moving the weight for the vibration, which is a really cool thing to see. On the bottom of the actual control itself, though, you will notice like there's like 2 little magnets on there. And with that, if you do buy their separate dock, all of their controllers that I've seen for the most part have this, where it is compatible with that charging dock. Shifting to the top, we're going to have those force feedback triggers. Here it just talks about the microchip, which is able to analyze the performance in the game, and just based off that, it's going to change how these operate. They do have game presets that we'll talk about in the software, and then with that, it'll actually communicate to the servo motor, and then it adjusts how that performs. So we have the trigger and then the gear assembly. With this, depending on what game, if we're doing like a racing game or a shooting game, it is going to provide a unique amount of feedback. It, to me, reminds me more of like the haptic feedback that you find with the PlayStation 5 controller, but you have more control over it where that's kind of set, and I do really like that controller. Here though, if I'm not going to just purely game on the PlayStation 5, I get to adjust these things for a PC, for a Nintendo Switch, for if I am using this on an Android-based device or an iOS-based device. So there is more, 1, compatibility, but 2, use cases for this, where PlayStation 5, it's really just towards PlayStation 5 and then some games on PC. Shifting to the back, we have the last things to cover here for the physical buttons. We have the on-off switch and then the 4 programmable buttons that you can change in the software. These are nothing by default. I do want to shift back to the front and that screen and just walk everybody through the options that you find inside of kind of that built-in software on this controller before shifting over to the Flydigi Space Station software that you would use on PC for this. So in order to get into this menu, you hold down the home button and the start button. Once you're there, the first tab is connection. Here you have the different connection types. I don't showcase this right now. I had to film it again, but if you click on the more tab, you do have more options for connection types that give you a little bit more kind of compatibility when it comes to what you're going to connect this to. After that, you have the button mapping. You have the triggers left and right. And here, normal, raise, sniper, recoil, trigger lock, which is the only one where you can actually adjust anything, and vibration. These are presets. You can't tailor it to the same degree that you can in the software, but it does give you the basic version of these types of presets. Then you have the button edit. That's actually just for the back buttons here, so you can map the paddles to any button that is on the controller if you want to. And then after that, turbo mode. So essentially, I believe this is if you hold it down, it'll just automatically click it over and over. You can't adjust any macros here. You have to do that in the software, and then you can enable and disable them from the controller. This is just allowing you to actually test the buttons, make sure everything is working correctly. You hold down the back button or the 0 button at the bottom to return, and then you can reset the controller if you want to. After that, configure switch. Here, it's just really the presets. Again, you're going to need the software if you want to tailor these, but you can adjust these between the various configurations, which are set by default. You have like FPS, racing, things like that there. Then you have the settings tab. We have brightness, vibration, language, hibernate, and this is just vibration, and then reset. So adjustments that you can make there. Just keep in mind it may drain your battery more by increasing the brightness or the amount of vibration. Language, that is important. I'm going to showcase how to change that here in a second. Last is the About tab. Now going back, so connection. So first tab, 1, 2, 3, 4. Click on that. It's the second tab down. Shift it over to English. That is important because this was all in Chinese when I first got this. So 1, 2, 3. Click that, click down, then you can change this back to English. Now, I don't know if everybody's controller is going to be in Chinese by default, but if it is, hopefully this helps you to switch it over to English. So now that we've covered all of the settings inside of the controller itself, let's switch over now to the Flydigi Space Station software. I do want to note that I am on my secondary rig, so I'm using a different microphone that doesn't sound nearly as good as my Shure SM7B, so that's why it will sound a little different. So this is going to be the software. Typically when you bring this up, the first thing it brings you to is a screen that has various controllers on it, and then you can choose the controller that you have. But usually when you boot up the controller, it actually just recognizes that and brings you right to this screen. With this, for PC configuration here, we have our 4 presets. We're going to look at this here in a second, but just covering the tab up at the top. So you have PC configuration, adaptive trigger, screen settings, test, and then switch mode configuration. Over here, clicking on the controller, this is going to be the various software and firmware that we have. I've gone through and updated all of these. They keep saying that they need to be updated, so I'm pretty sure I do have the latest on everything. It's just still giving me this, hey, I need to update, but there's nothing to update. It's doing the same thing here when it comes to the software version. So I think that's just, it's almost like checking if it needs to be updated. Settings, general language log. I have noticed here this is set to English, but we still have some Chinese that is popping up. Hopefully that gets updated here in the coming weeks or months. So PC configuration, regular, shooting, fighting, racing. If I click on the 3 dots here, rename, import, export. Moving to the main portion, home, button, joystick, motion sensing, trigger, and general. So any of these tabs right here, if I click on it, it's going to bring me to one of these tabs basically. So this is more just like a secondary way of doing that. And then over here, if I wanted to change the back paddles, I can do that really quick from here, but that's also going to be button mapping. So let's go ahead and just click button mapping. Any of these, because right now these aren't anything for the paddles, but any of the buttons, click on that, and then what do I want it to be, right? So rapid fire, macro, multifunction. A lot of options here for this. You can create your own stuff, which is awesome. So this is extremely customizable here. So we have the buttons, joystick, left and right, dead zone, if I want to scale this, right, bring this all the way back. Sensitivity curve, this has been on default for most of the video here. Classic, instant, delay, and custom. And you can change these independent of each other, right? So if I go instant, this doesn't have to be instant, right? If you notice over here, every time I make this adjustment for PC, the controller is currently plugged in. It automatically just saves this. So I don't have to click, hey, save this. Motion sensing, FPS, racing, map, left joystick, right joystick, and then you get to change this, tailor it to whatever game you're going to be playing. Leave that off right now. And then the trigger, a lot going on here. So left and right trigger, general mode, racing mode. Each of these have settings that you can adjust. So dampening start position, dampening strength, recoil mode, vibration start position, vibration starting strength, vibration intensity, vibration frequency. Sniper mode, starting position, trigger stroke, resistance, trigger lock, dampening start position, and then vibration. So vibration force coefficient, vibration shielding value, trigger stroke, frequency. Lot of things that you can adjust in this. I'm not going to cover everything in crazy detail here, but you will notice the difference between all of these in the various settings that they each have. So sometimes it's just like the general strength of how much resistance it's giving you. Sometimes it's like, hey, there's no resistance. You'll hit a stopping point and you have to give more force to click through that, like with recoil mode or sniper mode. Sometimes it's like, hey, this just won't click down as far. A lot of stuff going on here. So again, you can tailor this to various games and what you prefer. General. So for the lighting mode, breathing, gradient, feedback, steady, or off. We have our colors here, the brightness, time that it's going to stay on, grip. With this, it's just going to vibrate, and you can turn this off. It's actually vibrating the desk right now. There you go. There, it stopped. So controller vibration, it's on, and then the intensity here. So this is the bottom. So right here, these. So when we're looking at the trigger, that's going to be different in the gears and that, and the vibration that it has that's associated with it versus general vibration. So that is the layout. I do want to cover function settings really quick. So quick switch configuration, turn that on or off. Sleep, I have this set to 5 minutes, it'll turn off. And then on board, this is just our presets, and then kind of the quick switch configuration and how you would actually switch between these. Adaptive trigger. So here we have a lineup of various games, and it's actually a decent list. Hopefully it grows here over the coming weeks and months with this as well, but this is kind of like their own tailored presets to the adaptive triggers. So I'm going to showcase some games here in a second, but here we have Doom Eternal. I will showcase this game. This is where we see there's just, so we have adaptation scenario. There's still Chinese here. Only thing I recognize is BFG. So I'm assuming right here, one, it's just describing what this is going to be doing, but we just don't have it in English at the moment. There is a DS mode as well, which the other game I'll be showcasing is Spider-Man. So DS mode versus standard mode. What I've noticed with DS mode is it's more like general resistance in the triggers, where standard mode to me mimics more like what you find with the PlayStation 5 controller for this game. So it's not 100% the same, but it is closer to that, where DS mode to me is just, again, general restriction in the trigger. So I do like standard mode more with this. But let's go ahead and showcase Marvel's Spider-Man, where I'm using this mode, and then we'll do Doom Eternal. And for Doom, I'm going to showcase kind of from the side and then top down, so you won't actually see the weapons, but so you can hear, because I have the microphone, how it changes. And you're not going to be able to feel it, obviously, but you can hear how different each weapon does sound. So they are very distinct. Now, you have plays off of that, meaning if something is firing rapidly, you can assume any weapon that does that is pretty much the same or very similar in that regard. So you will notice similarities between all of these when it comes to certain weapons, but in general, you still will hear that very distinct change between these weapons. So let's go ahead and jump to that really quick. So very cool feature here. Like I said, hopefully this list grows over time, but you don't have to use this if you don't want to. You can come up with your own configurations. Again, if I went to PC configurations and you went to the trigger, you can make up your own here. Next, we have the screen settings tab. So here you can actually just put in your own image, your GIF, your GIF, however you want to say it. You can upload these. Here's the suggested ones. We click on more. This is all they have right now, which these are very, very basic. So hopefully over time we see this grow. But here I'm just using the game over one. And then status. So I show status bar. I like seeing the battery life here, but you could hide that if you wanted to. If you wanted to upload yours, we go into settings. This is where you could upload right here. The community, there's not a ton. There's really not a ton right now. That may grow over time, but so you would need to save this and then bring it in. It does tell you right here, if you're going to upload this, it can't exceed 130 px with this. So the status bar will automatically be hidden here if you're doing that. Next, we have the test tab. So this is where we're going to look at the polling rate. Now, keep in mind, this is saying this is a wired connection. So the polling rate, I've noticed wired, it does get higher. It goes closer to that 1,000. When we're looking at wireless, it's more like 600-700 pretty consistently from what I found. It does peak high, but it doesn't hit quite as high as this. So just slightly faster when wired, but it's still impressive wirelessly. You can see that, hey, these are the buttons that I'm pushing and any delay in that. So you can test this if you want to. You don't have to go to a separate website when doing this. And then switch mode configuration. With this, all the same stuff that we covered with PC configuration, but here we're going to save it to the onboard memory for the Switch. So this is awesome. Switch controllers usually don't have it. It's just like general vibration. So I like that I have the ability now. If I'm playing Smash Bros or Zelda or something like that, like a fighting game, like, and I want to feel the heaviness of a weapon, I can do that. Or if I want to feel like the controller, especially when we look at like a racing game, and I can come in here and like, hey, let's change this so we have that dampening start position and there's like a certain dampening strength to it. I can adjust this for that as well. We look at other games that may have, and even Mario, like maybe I want it to have a certain feel when I'm utilizing this controller with that game that I don't have when it comes to, at least for me, any other controller that I've used. Again, we usually get general vibration or something like that, but now I get to bring high level customization to the Switch, which is awesome. Just make sure that you do save this. This doesn't automatically save on this one. So that is going to be the software. Again, a ton of stuff to adjust in this that I haven't seen with other software. I've seen a good amount of adjustments with other software, looking like an Elite 2 controller. If we're looking at, I'm doing the ROG controller right now, they have a good amount, not this level. So this to me, very different. I do like how customizable this is, and that's actually going to bring us now to the things that I like about this controller. So this is a little bit more clean cut and dry. So there's a lot of things that I like about this, and for the most part, everything that I've talked about and described here, I do like. The leading thing here is going to be the amount of customization, those adaptive triggers, the amount of force in the thumbsticks that you can adjust, everything that you do find in the software, the coloring with it, the mappable buttons on the back. Like, they have taken everything that you may find, like, hey, one controller has maybe half of these things, or maybe it has like 60-70% of these things. It doesn't have all of these things, and they've really just put it all into this one controller. They're taking a lot of the upside that you find with the PlayStation 5 controller with the haptic feedback, and they've added it to this. Now, you don't get everything, so you don't get the touchpad with it, and the haptics on the PlayStation 5, of course, are different when it comes to certain games, but that is partly like wrapped inside of that specific game if they map it to it. With this, you get to tailor that experience to the game that you're playing. So it's different, and I like it because it is different in that regard, because now I can take games that normally I wouldn't have anything special with any type of haptic or trigger or adaptive trigger feedback. I get now to tailor that to my liking. And you saw in the software, there's a lot of things that you can adjust with that to make it to your liking. Normally I wouldn't care about a screen on a controller unless it serves a function, because a lot of times it's just going to be like, hey, look, you can put this image on there. I don't really care about that personally. Here it does serve a function. You get to adjust a lot of settings just on the controller where you don't necessarily need the software, and that's a good thing, because I'm going to talk about kind of the thing that I don't like here, which is something to do with the software here in a second. I do like the design, I like the feel of the controller, I like the buttons, I like the fact that they are clicky, but I also do know not everybody is going to like the fact that they are clicky. So if you're trying to be quiet, you're not going to be able to do that with this controller. The controller in general is just loud. I would say that's a gray area thing here, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, because not everybody will like the clicky sound of these. They're not going to like the adaptive triggers and how noisy those can get. So there's a bit of a trade-off. Now, the adaptive triggers, you can turn that off, so it won't be noisy at all. The clickiness here, though, they're just going to be clicky. So if you do not like that, this definitely isn't going to be the controller for you. I also like the color here. I like the white with the gray accent, and then where they put the RGB lighting, because it's just a nice little splash without being overwhelming. I wish the little Flydigi light panel was actually digital, so you could put something on there that way versus just scratching something into the little light panel blanks that they gave you. So that's probably not the best, but you could also just take that out if you wanted to and just have color there. So that is another option. So again, a lot of upside here. I would definitely say this is top 3 all-time best controllers in my opinion, because of this massive level of customization, how comfortable it feels in your hands, and a lot of the stuff that you can do in the software to just expand upon that customization. So you get a lot just within the controller, but then the software takes it to the next level. This is now going to transition us into the stuff that I don't like. As much as I like the things that you can do in the software, it did not work on my main PC. Couldn't figure out why. Deleted it, reinstalled it multiple times, looked online for things that I could do, tried a ton of different adjustments with overrides, with closing certain things on my PC to see if it would give it access, reached out to the company. It got to the point where they're like, hey, we may need to actually tap into your PC, which I'm not comfortable with that, so that they could figure out what's going on. Instead, they're like, hey, try it with another PC. So I ended up having to run this on my second rig. I have no idea why the software doesn't work on my main PC. Can't figure it out. So the compatibility issues or whatever issues they're having with it not launching, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that right now we're just seeing a lot of description more specific to the adaptive triggers and the games. It's just in Chinese. It hasn't been translated over. Now, that's an easy fix. They can go in there, they can update that. Hopefully we see more updates roll out over the coming weeks and months that fix any compatibility issues that other people are experiencing with this as well, because it's not just for this controller. They have a lot of other controllers here that they offer, and they're all going to go through this software. So it's a bigger issue if it's not working for a lot of people when it comes to, specifically, I have Windows 11. Now, outside of the software and the issues that I'm finding here, which to me, that's a software side issue. It's not a hardware side issue, and it's something that they can fix. I don't have any standout negatives with this product. It's just, hey, can we get some fixes for the software? On the gray area side, I have a couple things with this, and for the most part, I don't think any of these are deal breakers at all. But the first one is this only comes in this white and gray. If you wanted another color, if you wanted this, for instance, to come in black, they just don't have that option right now. For the connection side, it does offer a lot of different connections, but you will notice it will not connect to a PlayStation 5. It will not connect to an Xbox Series X. Now, the good news is their lineup has a bunch of other controllers, and they have specific ones that do connect to those systems. Here, I'm assuming that's also an issue where it's like, hey, we have to pay an extra fee when it comes to getting, maybe it's a codec or something like that, that allows us to connect to an Xbox or a PlayStation 5. And with that, we're just going to create a separate controller specifically for that. So again, they offer controllers for those systems. They aren't this controller though, so they don't have one that is this exact controller that then works with those consoles, which is a bit of a bummer, because specifically for Xbox, I think this would pair very well with an Xbox because of the different things. Again, you don't need software, you could just adjust it for the most part on the controller itself. Last is going to be the fact that this is a Chinese brand and they do sell on Amazon, but I don't know what that process is like when it comes to, hey, there's something wrong with this. Now, on Amazon, they list, hey, reach out to us, we'll fix it. But again, I don't know what that process is like of, hey, I need to do a warranty claim. The thumbstick broke, the motor broke, and they're like, hey, we'll send it back to us. Well, how long does that take? What's that whole process like? It always makes me a little bit nervous when it comes to these products where, again, it's in a different country in terms of their home base. Is the turnaround time quick? Do they just completely replace it? Like, I'm not going to be without a controller for months while they're trying to fix it. That, to me, it just seems like I would just rather buy a completely new controller at that point. So that makes me a little bit weary. I haven't had any issues with mine, but I've also only been using it a couple months. So in the next couple years, that's where, hey, something goes wrong. If I wanted to get this fixed and I was willing to even pay for it because it was out of warranty, again, what is that process like? Last thing I'm going to cover here is the price. I usually save this towards the very end. Here on Amazon, $159.99, so 160 bucks. I've noticed the pricing here is kind of all over the place. So I found this on other websites where it's under $100 or like really close to $100. So you can find this for cheaper at $160. Do I think it's worth it? Personally, I do. Again, this is like top 3 all-time favorite controllers for me personally. If you look at other controllers like an Elite 2, if you look at the Scuff PC, the Envision Pro is that one. That one's up there in price. So to me, it's competitive at $160. Now, you find it for under $100. To me, it's a no-brainer. Get this controller. I would take this over a regular Xbox controller when it comes to using it with PC, Nintendo Switch, any of the devices that this will connect to. For under $100, I would easily take this over those other options that are out there. But I don't like to tell people what to do with their money. That is 100% on you. Do you think this is worth that price or not? So that is going to wrap this video up. If you have any questions about this controller, let me know in the comment section. I will make sure to answer that for you there. I will have a link for this in the description with a couple links to those other websites where you can find it for a cheaper price if you want to pick it up. And that's going to wrap this one up. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this helps you make an informed purchasing decision when it comes to the Flydigi Apex 4 controller. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. And if you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.